Welcome back to the SWORD channel, where we focus on informing our youth, parents, and the community and adolescents' health and wellness by bringing awareness and education and teens living a drug-free lifestyle. We want our youth to soar to their greatest potential. In this video, we welcome back Emma Dugas, program specialist from MADD, North Texas, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And in today's video, Emma is going to give us a presentation on the power of youth, empowering youth to avoid peer pressure and have the understanding how drugs and alcohol impact their brains. Let's go. Emma, welcome back to our channel. Thank you for coming back to give your presentation on the power of youth. And now I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Erica, for having me here today. Yes, I'm going to be presenting Mothers Against Drunk Driving's Power of Youth program. We're going to go over some of those dangers and consequences of underage drinking and how not to get into an impaired driver's car. So I'd like to share my presentation with you. And so just to give you a little bit of background on MADD, we actually started in 1980. A mother lost her 13-year-old daughter to a drunk driver, and now we are nationwide. And we have 4 mission areas in our mission. It's, of course, to end drunk driving and help fight against drug driving. So not only were we seeing alcohol in our offender system, but we were also seeing drugs as well. So we wanted to add that to our mission. And then, of course, support the victims of this violent crime. We have victim services advocates that support our victims who have lost loved ones to drunk and drug driving crashes. They provide emotional support, support groups, and also any referrals that they might need through that process when it comes to filling out applications for lost wages or accompanying them through that court process. And then our last mission area is to prevent underage drinking. And that's what we're doing here today with our Power of Youth program. So you might think to yourself, why is MADD concerned about underage drinking? Well, alcohol use, teen alcohol use kills over 4,300 teens each year. And so MADD wants to provide all that information, those facts, so you are prepared, so we're able to eliminate those needless deaths each year. And then also, teen alcohol use can lead to alcoholism later on in life, and they're at higher risk for that. Throughout this presentation, I want you to keep these 3 questions in your mind. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Try to visualize that, what that looks like in your mind. And then how could getting involved with alcohol or other drugs impact where you want to be? And then also think of those situations that might come up or you might have already experienced that could get in your way. So think about all that hard work, all those different life-changing events, graduating high school, graduating college, possibly starting a career or a family within that 10-year period. Visualize what that looks like. So I'm going to ask you some multiple choice questions, and I want to put you to the test to see how much you know. So what year was the drinking age set at 21? So we have 1956, 1929, 1984, or 1978. You pick C, you are correct. So on July 17th, 1984, President Reagan signed into law that Uniform Drinking Age Act. So this mandated all 50 states to adopt 21 as that legal drinking age, but within 5 years. So around 1988, 89, all states had set 21 as that minimum drinking age. So if you think about it, that's not that long ago. So even some of your parents might even remember when the drinking age was at 18 and it transitioning to 21. And so now we know more. And we're going to go over on why it was changed to 21. Because the more research and the more things we know, the better steps we can take to be safe. Like, for instance, back in the day, these were real ads that were shown. So this was something that maybe my parents and my parents' parents actually saw growing up. And you would never see this nowadays. I mean, a pregnant woman smoking, or a doctor endorsing a cigarette, or giving a baby a sip of beer. But now we know those dangers and consequences, and we can make better decisions. So here are some local penalties. So MIP stands for minor in possession. So this is a minor who attempts to purchase or purchases or possesses or consumes or misrepresents their age. So as you can see, the more offenses that you do, the more harsh the sentencing is. And think about all that hard work you do when you have to get your driver's license. It is a driver's education, doing all the testing. And just on your first offense, you get your license suspended for 30 days. And so this is something that, keeping in mind, knowing that there's consequences to those actions. All right, here's our next question. So around what age does the brain finish developing? We have late teens, mid-20s, 35-ish, or early 40s. If you pick mid-20s, you are correct. So everyone is different and they develop at a different rate. But latest research shows that in general, by mid-20s is when your brain finishes developing. So as you can see in this graph, that from 5 years old all the way up to 20-year-old brain, there's a lot of development that's going on, especially during that preteen and teen brain. And so you can see that little white box there. That is where your executive functions are. And so what are your executive functions? That is when your brain is taking old information and new information, and that allows you to organize your task, planning, judgment, self-control, being able to do time management, all those different types of functions. And that's one of the last things to finish developing, because originally your brain starts developing from the back to the front. And so that last part to finish developing, that's your prefrontal cortex right up here. And that's where your executive functions are, is the last thing to develop fully. And so I want to give you an example. So I want you to think of a time where you might have, made a decision and then realized afterwards, oh, that was not a good decision. And you might have heard your parents say to you, "What were you thinking?" So you wouldn't think that actual good judgment is something that develops in your brain. But yes, so that's why it's important not to introduce those chemicals of alcohol and drug use, because it can have long-lasting negative effects to those functions. For an example, I wanted to show you this graph. You have a 15-year-old male non-drinker on the left and a 15-year-old male heavy drinker on the right. Now, when they took these pictures, they were asked to complete memory tasks. And so they were using those executive functions as these pictures were taken. And so as you can see, there's a lot of activity going on in that non-drinker brain and hardly any in the heavy drinker brain. And if you notice where the arrow's pointing, that's where your executive functions are located. There's no activity there. And this is him 2 weeks alcohol free. So it takes a long time for your brain to recover and repair that damage. And so we've learned through lots of research that underage alcohol use has long-lasting negative effects on those learning and memory functions. So on marijuana, this is one myth that you might hear. It focuses me. I study better high, but that is not true. THC affects that part of the brain that is needed, affects that part of the brain called the hippocampus. So this is necessary for learning. And these effects last long after the high. So we've learned because marijuana is a fat soluble and our brain is a muscle, it actually stays within our system for weeks, even after that high is gone. And it can still affect those learning and memory functions, just like alcohol does. And so we've learned that it actually affects college students, and they're more likely to drop out than those who do not. And when you abuse drugs and marijuana like that, it can actually cause psychosis. It can also increase aggression, violence, sexual encounters. This is all negative events that could happen within your life by using drugs and alcohol. All right, third question. So which drug is the most addictive? We have alcohol, marijuana, opiates, or are they equal? If you pick D, you are correct. They are equal. So you'd be surprised that some people don't think alcohol is a drug, but it is. And opiates they're painkillers. So even because doctors prescribe those, any chemical that you ingest that releases that dopamine chemical, which is your happy chemical in your brain, if you abuse that, that can actually rewire your brain for addiction. So legal or illegal, when you abuse it, especially for that growing brain, it can wire your brain for addiction. So another way to look at it on this graph, the younger that you start drinking alcohol, say as young as 13, you are at greater risk, over 40%, of having an alcohol disorder later on in life. So if you are drinking or have tried it or you're still drinking, choose to quit while your brain is still growing. Allow your brain to repair itself so you can use that full potential. Because remember, we asked at the beginning of the presentation, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And so you want to be able to use that full potential to reach those life-changing events to reach that goal. So I want you to think in your mind right now, why would a 13-year-old drink or do drugs? So I've heard some teens say because they see their parents do it, or peer pressure, or a bad breakup. And so I want you to think to yourself, what are some positive activities that you could do to get through bad days? I know for me, I love to binge watch Netflix, or eat some of my favorite foods, or sleep. I've heard some teens say they like to work out or call a friend. And that is a big thing too. Surround yourself around positive people who support you and you can rely on to help you get through those bad days. Here's another marijuana myth. It's safer than alcohol. And we talked about that. It's not. So 1 in 6 people who start using in their teens will become addicted, just like alcohol. And in 2018, over 4.4 million people were diagnosed with a substance use disorder specifically to marijuana. And so it is definitely not safer than alcohol. They are both drugs that can rewire that brain for addiction. Here's our last question. So car crashes make up what percentage of underage drinking deaths? So we have 25%, 75%, 12%, 68%, or 32%. If you pick 32%, you are correct. So the key to that question is car crashes. So 32% is underage drinking related deaths that are car crashes, whereas the other 68% are underage drinking related deaths that do not involve a car. So 30%, that's homicides, that's murder. 14%, that's suicides. 9%, that's other poisonings, alcohol poisonings. And you have drownings, fires, and falls that make up the rest. And so I want to give you an example. For instance, if, say, your boyfriend breaks up with you, and then you get in a fight with your best friend in the same day. That's a hard day. That's a hard day for anyone. But some teens revert to drugs and alcohol to cope for that bad day. And so what happens to those executive functions? They're impaired. They go out the window. So that's why the yelling, the screaming, the doing, the saying things that you normally wouldn't do happen. And that's how homicides happen. That's how suicides happen. Alcohol poisoning. And so just taking away those keys does not take away all the risks. So I want you to think of those positive activities to help you get through those bad days. And then also another example, is when you're at a party and say your best friend is your ride and you notice they're drinking or doing drugs. How would you handle that? And so come up with that plan. Come up with those phrases. If you're in a situation and at a party where they're offering you alcohol and drugs, what are some things you can say? I've had some teens tell me just flat out no thanks. You know what? I got to get up early in the morning. I've got a big test the next day I got to study for. Or I've got a family event coming up. Another way to get home safe if you're at a party where your friend is your ride is you have Uber, you have Lyft, you have public transportation that you can rely on to get both of you home safe. And as a sober driver, you can drive them home. Try to have that plan in place. Talk to a parent, talk to a trusted adult that you can depend on to get you home safe. I know one teen would text one letter to their parent and let them know that they need to call them. And so the mom would call the teen and say, hey, we got a family emergency, I'm coming to get you. So that took that pressure off the teen telling his friends, hey, I'm uncomfortable, I don't want to be here. He put it on the mom. So have some sort of plan like that in place. So here's some signs of alcohol poisoning: vomiting, shortness of breath, pale, cold, clammy, passing out. definitely call 911. And then here are the steps to take when they pass out. You put them on their side with their knee forward to help balance. You could put something behind their back to keep them from going on their back. Then take their hand and put it underneath their face. That way it lifts them up. And so at this point, when there's alcohol poisoning, they have lost that gag reflex muscle. And so if they were to vomit, if they were laying on their back, they could choke. So by having them on their side and their head lifted, if they were to vomit, it could go out into the side. And then by calling 911, you protect yourself with the 411 lifeline law. So if you stay with the victim and you cooperate with the operator and the police, then you are protected and you cannot be charged with minor in possession. So not only are you protected, but you also potentially save a life. Here's our last myth, marijuana myth. I drive better high. This is not true. Driving is a divided attention task, and that THC chemical in marijuana, that mutes those senses needed to drive safely. So you have slower reactions. You cannot react easily to signals and sounds on that road. And you have lane weaving and decreased coordination. And remember that marijuana stays in your system way longer than alcohol. So it can stay in that system for weeks. And so it can impair those senses for weeks, even after that high is gone. So if you know someone that has a problem, this is what you can do. Talk to them, let them know how you feel. Let them know you're worried about them. You could share local resources, and you can get that, by either looking up on the internet or also going to your school counselor. They have those resources available. And then talk to a parent or a trusted adult. And then there's a hotline you could call, 800-662-HELP, and then invite them to do non-alcohol or drug activities. Be that good friend to them. So here are some phrases that you can protect yourself and protect your squad. These are just some social media handles that we use in our social media. We also do hashtag protect your friends. Pledge to make that commitment to be alcohol-free till 21. Find others who will share in your commitment. Watch out for pressures, recognize potential barriers, talk to a parent or trusted adult, and make that plan every time before you go out. Evaluate your friends in life and identify barriers to your success, and remove those people or situations that are not healthy. I know that's easier said than done. Those are your friends. But if they are not supporting you, if they are bringing out the worst in you, then it's definitely time to reevaluate that friendship and know when to cut ties. You are all precious cargo, and you have the right to speak up. You have that power, you have that will to succeed. So we do have a pocket guide. We'll make sure that you have the link to download that. And we also have a MADD Teen Influencer program. If you'd like more information, reach out to me. My contact information will be available for you at the end of this presentation. And then if you would like to support MADD, you can join or start a Walk Like MADD team. Thank you so much, everyone. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. And MADD is here, and we are not going to give up until we have a world with no more victims. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma, for that great presentation. Okay.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you.
So thank you for that great presentation for our youth. Please follow MAD on their social media platform. We'll have their information in our description box below. We'll also have a link to their website and other MAD North Texas informational resources. And then also look out for more videos as we talk more about adolescents' health and wellness. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.